coming to you once again from Hook Outdoors here on Cave Run Lake. This is the report for June the 2nd, June the 3rd here, 2021. And we are coming out of a bit of a bad weather cycle here. Started late last week. We'd had a really warm weekend the previous weekend. Water temps were on the uptick. There was some 80-degree water pretty much all around. And then come Thursday, the wheels fell off. Started raining there, I guess what, Thursday night into Friday morning? Yeah. And then it just went downhill from there. And come Friday night, probably around 7, maybe 8 o'clock. And the reason I know this is some guys that we know put on just a buddy tournament, an open deal, and they try to do one every couple of weeks. It's called the Poor Boys here. We've talked about it before. Well, last Friday was their first one, and pretty much about the time everyone took off and probably got to their fishing spots, it came a rain of biblical proportions. I was here at my shop and saw across the lake, and I thought it was fog coming up the way rains will do this time of year, fog coming up out of the hollows, but it wasn't. It was a wall of rain coming across the lake, and it was just an absolute deluge for like 30 or 45 minutes. And on top of that, it was cool, and the wind was blowing a little bit, so it would have made for a pretty miserable fishing trip. And then the next morning we wake up, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's 44 degrees. So kind of put the damper on the holiday business here at Hook Outdoors, but that's okay. The fishing's been pretty good through it all. If you could stand the weather, seems like everything's been biting. But and it didn't monkey with the lake level too much. The lake's pretty much at summer pool right now. We're setting at 730 feet of elevation. Well, actually, we're setting at 730.7 feet of elevation, which is 0.7 of a foot above 730, which is a normal summer pool. The inflow as of today is 169 CFS. The outflow down the chute there is 254 CFS. Like I said, water temps were starting to hit into the 80s last week. We're probably now, with all the rain and the cool weather we've had, we're probably down, would you say, lower 70s, mid 70s?
Yeah, I would definitely say with a few of the colder nights and all that stuff, we're probably dipping down into the low 70s a little bit. But still during the middle of the day, you're going to find mid 70s, 75, 76. Because last week we were seeing a couple, low 80s and right at 80. So we only had really 2 days of really, really cold weather.
Right.
So I don't really think it would have affected it that much.
Okay. All right. Well, on to what the fish are doing, folks. Starting off with the crappie, from what I'm hearing, they're on the wood right now, which is pretty much their normal operating procedure. Minnows have been a big item for us here as far as areas to fish. The river has been doing well, particularly up North Fork, Poppin' Rock, Bangor, up through there from what I'm hearing. There's been some fish being caught out of Beaver Creek and out of Longbow. You can go up there, seems like up to the Longbow Marina and put in and come downstream. Around Leatherwood, that seems to be a really pretty good area. And again, they've got the buoys all reset up there, so it's a pretty easy trip in and out of there now, not like it has been over the years to where it was just kind of playing Russian roulette with your boat going up and down through there. They're still not on a consistent depth right now. The only consistent thing that I am seeing is it seems like the steeper the banks. I'm not hearing anything about them being on any kind of a deeper flat or anything like that, or even like the typical channel bends and forks and things like that. it just seems like they're on these steeper banks that have a decent amount of brush on them. The catfish have been really good. Just your traditional stuff, your bluegill, your suckers, your goldfish, that kind of thing. Chicken livers, cut bait. It just seems like everything's working, and maybe it's just where the water's starting to warm up and the weather's starting to get better. There's just more people out fishing. I know I'm hearing a lot of things. Doesn't really have to do with Cave Run, but a lot of the local pay lakes are reporting a lot of action, a lot of people getting out, a lot of people fishing. If you're on a boat here at Cave Run fishing, seen a lot, talked to a few guys that have been fishing on the flats there at Zilpo. Seems like they've been catching some fish there, and seems like up Beaver Creek has been a pretty good area. I think a lot of locals. There's a lot of guys from over in that Frenchburg area that come down Beaver Creek and crappie fish. And while we're at it, as far as catfish go, the spillway has been a really good area here about the last 2 weeks. Seems just like the cut bait, the chicken livers, that sort of thing seems to be working really well there. They haven't had a whole lot of outflow, so there's just a tremendous amount of bait fish and a lot of fish that are just coming up in there. They've also caught a lot of crappie, particularly off the wall there, just kind of where it breaks out into the main spillway area. And there's been a really good muskie bite there too. I know of 4 fish. There was a guy in here Monday that it just came from there, and he said he saw 4 muskies caught, right around where he was fishing at. So, the spillway's been a pretty good area. And as far as a muskie bite goes here on Cave Run, with all this rain and stuff we've been having, seems like it's went from a jigging bite a couple of weeks ago when it was warmer, and it is now shifted to more of a topwater bite. Kind of some buzzbait stuff, but been some glide bait deals going on. The water's still relatively cool for the time of year. We're not up in that mid 80s, to where it gets hot and the fish are starting to plow down deep. So they're just fishing around a lot of these grass beds right now. It seems like the grass is starting to emerge a little bit from what I'm hearing, and the water's got a decent clarity to it. It was starting to clear up pretty good, but I think that rain we've had the last few days kind of clouded it up a little bit. Wouldn't you say, Evan?
It got a little bit of color to it. Just driving around and looking at different parts of the lake. It's not as clear as it was last week, especially after we got done with that little, what I would say like a little miniature drought that we had.
Yeah.
3 or
it had been a while since we had any rain.
2 or 3 weeks with no rain. Water, it got extremely clear, so it got a little bit of a cloud to it, but nothing too crazy.
Have you been by Poppin' Rock in the last few days to see what that looks like up there?
I was up the river. I drove over the river about, I think, a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. There was a good color up there.
I'd be curious.
Was a real good color
I'd be curious what it looked like with all this rain we've had the last few days.
About a week and a half ago, I drove up through there and over that bridge there going into Menifee County, and it had a pretty decent little color.
I was in Warwick yesterday, and it looked really nice. It looked really good. It wasn't real clear, but it wasn't all murky either. It just had a pretty good color to it. But that's kind of the deal with as far as the main lake here goes with everything that's going on. Evan's going to jump in here now and talk a little bass fishing as far as kind of what's going on here right now, and then after that we're going to talk about a little topwater fishing. It's getting the time of year as the temps warm up and the days are longer and the mornings are warmer and the nights are better. Just it's just a good time of year for some topwater stuff. But before we get there, did you see the picture on Facebook? It may be somebody one of these bass guys that caught that big catfish the other night.
I did.
Who was that?
That was oh Lord, Lyons. Casey Lyons. Yeah,
that's a big one.
That was a giant.
What did he catch it on? You think?
I don't know. He was night fishing, so I'm just gonna guess just off of what most people throw at night, just a big old dark colored worm. But who knows? That was a
whopper,
giant.
man. That thing looked like it was probably about 40, 50 inches long.
It was a giant.
Gee whiz! So there you go. And more than likely, you think he was on the flats?
Couldn't really say, but that's where a lot of people fish.
Yeah. All right. Well, Evan's going to tell us about some the bass fishing right now, and then we're going to get on into talking about some topwater action.
Yeah, so the bass fishing here at Cave Run, it's gotten really good over the past couple of weeks. The water temperature is finally consistently staying warm. The grass is starting to, pop up really good. We're starting to see, good populations of grass in areas. The flats, and by now, really, any part of the lake that has, a pretty shallow flat or anything like that, or a point that sticks out on the main lake, it's going to have grass on it. There's several different types of grass in the lake, and, they really all hold fish, but it seems like the deeper grass that grows out, 9 to 13 feet, kind of somewhere in that ballpark, that's the grass that when they really move out into it, that's the grass that they want to live in for some reason. But you can still catch a lot of fish, especially right now where those fish are just coming off of beds. They're still living fairly shallow. So right now, honestly, the bank grass should be a little bit better than the grass, say, out in 10, 12 feet.
Yeah.
So, but still, your best baits right now, like we're getting ready to dive into topwater fishing. Topwater right now, when that water temperature's, in the low to mid 70s, that's arguably the best time of the year to throw a topwater.
Yeah.
And, I'm talking, like a Rebel Pop-R or something like that, just, old school baits like that. They still produce really well.
Right.
Spook style baits.
Yep.
There's a whole lot of different ones on the market you can buy. Buzzbaits are always really good in the post spawn. And, just kind of going into more of where the bass should be right now. The bluegill are spawning like crazy right now. So
yeah, they are.
The bass should be up there, right there with them, because when you have a massive population of their bait fish up there, not necessarily shad, but I'd still call bluegill right now bait fish. When they're up there congregated up really shallow, then bass are going to be right there with them.
Like up behind Scotch Creek.
Exactly, yeah, behind Scott. Basically, the back of any pocket or the back of any creek on the lake right now, because there's just such a massive population of bluegill in the lake. They spawn literally
Millions
everywhere. They spawn everywhere. So really anywhere you have shallow water, and by shallow I mean 3 foot of water or less, they're going to spawn in that.
Yeah.
And what they do is they just get up there and they make like if you see a big wad of bluegill bedding, it just looks like a field of almost tires in the water, because it's just Here's a really good comparison. It looks almost like a honeycomb.
Oh yeah,
you've got just dots of dot
does.
of just beds everywhere, just all grouped up in one area.
It does.
And almost every single one of those dots that you can see, they just look like dark spots in the water. And almost every single one of them will have a bluegill sitting on it.
Right.
So that's just really easy pickings for a bass to come up there really quick, eat a few bluegill, head right back out. So bluegill spawn is a really good time to catch fish. We've talked on here before about a shad spawn being really good, and it's amazing. And there might still be a little bit of a shad spawn going on right now. It just kind of depends. But I know for a fact the bluegill spawn's going on really good right now, because I'm seeing a lot of guys, even a lot of guys that are just reputable bass fishermen around here. They're going out and filling coolers full of bluegill.
Oh yeah, they are.
You can go catch a lot of fish.
Yeah, you can spawn right now. You sure
catch
can.
A lot of them. But the bass should be pretty shallow right now still with that bluegill spawn going on. Not saying that you won't catch fish out deep, but brush piles, deep grass, and all that stuff, it'll still produce.
Is it a good temp right now for spinnerbaiting still?
You can still catch fish on spinnerbait. Yeah, it's kind of past its really good time of year.
Yeah.
The best time to throw a spinnerbait is that late March to early April time frame. But still, it's if you throw the right colored spinnerbait, where that water's so clear, if you throw just a shad pattern, your silvers and blacks and things like that, and sticking with like the silver blades right now, the willow leaf blades, that's going to be your best bet if you're going to throw a spinnerbait. So if you have confidence in anything like that, a spinnerbait, a chatterbait, anything like that, throw it. That's all I can say. They're just eating shad, so if they see something that imitates a shad, and they're a feeding fish, they're going to eat it. That's about all I can say about that. But you got to think, if they'll eat a topwater right now, they'll still eat that moving bait like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or squarebill or something like that.
They will.
If they're going to eat a topwater, they're going to eat that too. So there's really no need to overcomplicate it.
The only sound more enjoyable than the plop of your lure breaking on the surface of the water is the high-pitched squeal of your reel as you pull in your first bass of the day. To help ensure the first catch on your line is a fish, try the SB57 by Bill Lewis, the creators of Rattle Trap. The SB57 features a wide coffin-shaped bill that enables the bait to easily drive through brush, stumps, rocks, and more. Plus, its computer chip construction gives it that tight wiggle you and your next bass are looking for. The SB57 is Mark Daniels Jr.'s signature lure and is available at Hook Outdoors Tackle Shop, located on Cave Run Lake, or rattletrap.com.
To kind of move on, that's really what the bass are doing here at Cave Run right now. To move on to what we're talking about now, just kind of a technique-specific episode, really, is topwater fishing.
Yep.
You know, topwater fishing, it's primarily the post-spawn right now.
Right.
When you start seeing water consistently in, the mid-70s and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
you'll basically almost all of your fish are going to be on post-spawn, areas right now. And that's really the best time to throw a topwater. Those fish are moving out. Once they get over, when the fish move out of their spawning area, specifically the females, they have a little bit of a funk where they're beat up, they're tired, they've been up there fanning beds and spawning and all that stuff for a week. They're just really beat up, and they'll move back out a little bit deeper, and they'll for just a couple of days they'll just kind of sit there. Really, I mean, they won't do much. They
heal up.
They might eat once or twice a day, but really they're just sitting out there to heal up. But when they get off of that little transition right there, that's when they really eat. So this is one of the best times to throw a topwater, because a lot of fish are really active. They're wanting to eat like crazy. And really, when we're talking about topwater fishing specifically for bass, there's we'll go into really three main categories, and that's just a popper style bait, a spook style bait, and a buzz bait.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of combine the buzz bait and the whopper plopper into really one category.
Sure.
You might have guys who are just complete just whopper plopper fanatics. That
They're
would
both
say,
prop
oh,
baits.
it's completely different, but they're both prop baits. They're really similar, but there's a little bit of difference in them. But we'll just for the means of time, we'll combine them.
Right.
But a popper, just going into that one first, a popper is a really old bait. It's been around for a long time. You can find just like we've got some in our garage at the house. I mean, just hand carved wooden poppers, and that just shows you right there they've been around for a long time.
Oh yeah.
But basically, all a popper is just most of the time a popper ain't but 2 to 4 inches long, somewhere in that ballpark. Just kind of depending on what company makes it, and they have different sizes too. But they're pretty small bait, and all it is just basically a cone shaped bait.
That's
that
cupped on one end.
It just has a cupped mouth on it, to where when you twitch your rod, it just kind of dives down in the water real quick and shoots up a little thing of water.
Yeah.
And it just makes a boom, boom sound like that. With a popper, what I basically do is I basically just kind of vary the retrieve. I'll start out, say I'm going out on a new lake or something like that, or even Cave Run. Heck, I kind of vary it, and them fish are different every single day. So if I'm going out and I just pick up a popper first thing, one cast, I might twitch it real quick, pop 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 like that, and then the next cast I might go pop pop pause for a second or two, pop 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 pause for a second or two, or something like that, and then I'll just kind of let the fish tell me what's going on, because if they're really active, they're more than likely they're going to want that just real quick pop 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 right to the boat. Right. And that's where you can cover a lot more water as a fisherman, and you can inevitably get more bites.
Right.
So I'll just kind of mess around with that. But say them fish are a little bit more lethargic and a little bit more slow eating for some reason. That little bit of a pause right there in between your pops. I'll usually pop it 2 or 3 times, just still real quick. Pop pop like that. Then I'll pause it for 2 or 3 seconds, and then I'll just do it again, just back and forth, just like that, until I really see what the fish are wanting. So that's kind of a thing. Or sometimes I'll just do a pop pause, just real slow. Yeah. Especially say I'm going down a bank, and I find, like at Cave Run, if I'm going down a bank, and then all of a sudden there's a lay down or a stump, or just like a patch of grass or something like that, and it's just a piece of isolated cover. It's a high percentage point. Say that's the only piece of cover down a certain bank that I'm fishing. I'm really going to cover that piece of cover right there if I'm throwing a popper. And most of the time I'm going to fish it. I'll fish it fast the first cast. Pop 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 pop, just to see if there's a fish that's really active, wanting to eat real quick. Right. And then the next cast I'll probably slow it down. Pop pause, pop pause, something like that. I just kind of changed it around like that. But
now does in your selection of your popping style baits, I know what we sell here as far as colors go, but does color make that big a difference? Whether it's like got a black bottom or a silver bottom or a white bottom or.
This is for me, and I mean everybody's different. Everybody's got their confidence baits and kind of what they do. But for me, and as much as I fished at topwater, topwater is really one of my favorite things to throw. I love it. I've got confidence in it, and basically any time from the end of March through the end of October or sometimes even November,
Right.
I'll have a topwater tied on. And basically what I've noticed, I keep it as simple as I possibly can.
Right.
I throw, if it's cloudy or overcast or raining, I'll throw just a straight bone. Just
Right.
a bone or a white colored popper, or any of my topwaters really.
Yeah.
A spook or a popper. We'll just stick with popper specifically. But just a white or a bone color if it's, overcast, cloudy, raining, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's clear, sunny, bright, and all that stuff, and I'm throwing a popper, I'm going to throw either a chrome bottom or a completely chrome bait, or I've even started throwing a little bit of, it's almost like a translucent. It's got a little bit of a glitter to it or a little bit of a shine to it. It's just a really, really faint chrome, but you can still see through it. It's translucent, but it's got just a little bit of a chrome color to it.
Right.
But that's another really good color. So if it's sunny, either chrome or clear. And if it's cloudy, either bone or white.
Now, what about where do buzz baits kindly hit their stride? I guess you'd say. Are they more of a reaction type deal, or is there something in particular that you have in mind when you're throwing a buzz bait?
Yeah, a buzz bait's an amazing reaction bait. If I know that the fish are on a really good topwater bite, and say it's not specifically a shad, pattern, like. If I know there's a shad spawn going on, I'm going to pick, a popper or a spook. But
right.
say I know there's not a shad spawn, it's, say like right now specifically, it's post spawn, there might or might not be a shad spawn, but we'll say that there's not. I might be more than likely going to pick up a buzzbait before a popper or a spook just because I can cover a lot of water.
Right.
And a buzzbait's a really good way to draw a really big bite. So me as a tournament fisherman, that's kind of what's pulling me towards the buzzbait more.
Okay.
So say I can get 2 or 3 bites in a day on a buzzbait, but they're all quality fish, 2-3 pounders. That's kind of what I'm going to pick up more than likely, besides of a spook or a popper.
Does the color of a buzzbait make such a difference? Because a lot of guys that come in here and buy buzzbaits, they talk more about the squeak than they do the color.
Yeah, really.
There's like whole brands of buzzbaits they don't like because they don't have the squeak.
Right, and that's the thing. A good, I'll say what a good buzzbait fisherman is really nitpicky. They're really, really nitpicky about their buzzbait.
Sure.
So me personally, I haven't seen that big of a difference play with a buzzbait. Something I do with a buzzbait and something that's kind of took the whole industry by storm is when I get a buzzbait, like I order most of my buzzbaits from Jenko where I'm working with them, and they make an amazing buzzbait, and they wire their skirts on. I take a pair of pliers and I untie that wire and I take that skirt off and I put a toad on it.
Okay.
That's what something a lot of people
that
started
is a
doing,
thing now.
That buzz toad, anytime you really see a guy throwing a buzzbait on TV or something like that, or on an Elite Series tournament, or you say you're watching FLW Live or something like that, if they're throwing a buzzbait, they're throwing that buzz toad, and basically all they do is they take their buzzbait, whatever brand it may be, and they take a whatever toad, like a Zoom horny toad, or
now is there a particular area that you're fishing that if you're throwing topwater, say like is there a particular area where you tend to throw one type of lure over other one, like if you throw you throw like a buzzbait or a buzz toad over top of weed bed, or if you're fishing in some standing timber, do you throw a popper or a walking type lure, that kind of thing?
On an open bank, like we'll take a trip down to Cumberland real quick. Say I'm fishing Cumberland or Dale Hollow or something like that. Just a highland reservoir that has high steep rock banks or something like that. I'm going to be more likely to pick up a spook or a popper or something like that. Not saying they won't eat a buzzbait really good on.
Are you
Cumberland.
fishing it parallel with the bank?
I've got my boat 5 or 6 feet from the bank, and I'm just throwing parallel, just
Okay.
covering as much water as I possibly can.
Okay,
But,
trying to catch those fish that
yeah,
may
right,
be in
right. I
4
like-
to 6, 8 feet of water,
Right,
something
yeah,
like that.
Instead of, we're at Cumberland, you can be 20 yards off the bank and be sitting in, 85 foot of water.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
weird
yeah,
lake.
yeah.
But
Uh,
I like paralleling a lot with my top water. So if I'm on a
Mhm.
bank like that with not a lot of cover, I'll throw the spook or a popper. But say I'm around, grass or, standing timber or bushes or something like that, I like a buzzbait around all that stuff because
Mhm.
I feel like for me, a buzzbait's a lot more weedless because you've just got that one hook hanging back there.
Sure.
And say I'm beating it around bushes or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I've got that really the blade and the wire that holds the blade on that makes that little crook right there.
Mm-hmm.
It almost acts like a weed guard.
Yeah.
So I can get it up there and I can
Yeah,
and I
that
can
frame.
just- and I can just
yeah,
hit
that
it.
blade frame and that head frame and all
and I
like
can
that. Yeah.
I can hit that buzzbait off of a stump or a rock
Yeah,
or
you
something like
can.
that sticking out of the water.
Yeah.
I can hit it to where in the middle of my cast I'll just smack a rock or a stump or something like that,
Mhm.
and I won't get hung up. To whereas if I'm throwing a spook or a popper or something, and it's got 3 sets of treble hooks on it,
Right.
then if I hit a stump or something like that, it's getting hung up, and then
Okay.
I have to go through the whole trouble of getting my boat up there and unhanging it and then going
Yeah.
back out and
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, disrupt your whole pattern
all
of fishing.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess your third type, is that basically your stick or like your spooks, your dog type lures and that kind of thing? Is that your third type?
I talked about buzzbaits and I talked about poppers, and really poppers and spooks are pretty similar.
Yeah.
I can just kind of run through them real quick. A spook, as far as colors go, I go by the same rule with a spook as I do a popper.
Yeah.
If it's cloudy and rain and all that stuff, I'm going to throw the bone or the white. And
Mhm.
if it's clear and sunny, I'm going to throw the translucent or the chrome.
Right.
And as I'll get into rods because I've got 3 different types of top waters, but
Right.
I've only got 2 different types of rods that I throw.
Sure.
So I throw the same rod for both my spooks and my poppers.
Mhm.
And what I throw, it's just me personally. People are different. I throw a 6.6 medium rod
Right.
with it's a fast reel.
Mhm.
I've got a set. No, I switched up this year. I got an even faster reel. I put an 8.3 to 1 reel on for my
I
top
find
waters.
that from what I've been reading, a lot of these topwater setups that they're using these ultra fast reels anymore.
Yeah, I throw the 8.3 to 1 reel and then the 6.6 medium rod. And as far as my line goes, I throw 10-pound or 12-pound monofilament.
Right.
And the monofilament, it's because it floats. Fluorocarbon. Everybody now is fluorocarbon. They throw it on everything. But a topwater is the one thing you absolutely cannot throw a topwater on fluorocarbon because it
Yeah.
sinks.
Oh.
It'll just mess up your cast.
Sure.
Your topwater won't run right. So I throw, say I'm at Cumberland or something like that, really clear water. It's deep. I'm
Mhm.
fishing for smallmouth. They're really side-oriented fish. That's when I'm going to drop down and I'm going to fish that 10-pound monofilament.
Mhm.
As to where if I'm in dirty water, say I was on Kentucky Lake or something like that, and I was throwing a spook, I'm going to
Mhm.
throw 12 or sometimes even 15. If I'm on a really good body of water where I know there's big fish, and
Mhm.
especially if I'm fishing around cover, if I'm fishing around boat docks, bushes, things like that on Kentucky Lake,
Right.
that's when I'll jump up and I'll more than likely be throwing 12 or 15
Right.
on the monofilament. And then we'll get into buzzbaits. Buzzbaits, I throw on a 7'3" medium heavy rod, and I fish it on another just same again a fast reel, either a 7.5 to 1 or 8.3 to 1, just anything fast like that.
Right.
Because you really can't throw a buzzbait on a slower reel because you try too hard to keep up with it.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
say you were throwing a buzzbait on a cranking rod on
Mhm.
like a 5:4 to 1 gear ratio.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be turning your daggum reel handle 1,000 times a second just to try and keep that buzzbait on
Oh,
top.
you wear your arm
yeah,
out.
just to keep that buzzbait on the top of the water.
Yeah.
But where if I'm throwing like my 8.3 to 1 gear ratio reel, I can just reel at a casual pace, just keep
Mhm.
just keep myself from wearing myself down,
Right.
and I keep that buzzbait on the top of the water where it needs to be.
Okay.
And then on my buzzbait, I throw it. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be throwing it on 15-pound fluorocarbon.
Right.
And really, the only reason with the fluorocarbon is I'm not fishing it. I'm keeping a constant retrieve on my buzzbait.
Yeah.
Whereas on a spook or a popper, I'm putting
Mhm.
pauses in there,
Mm-hmm.
and that way, like say if I was throwing fluorocarbon on a popper, when I go to pause, that fluorocarbon's going to sink.
Yeah, and it'll
then
be nose down.
It's going to mess up my cast,
Yeah.
mess up my bait and all that stuff. But I feel fine fishing fluorocarbon on a buzzbait because I've got a constant retrieve.
Right.
And I don't really have to worry about it that much.
Okay. And one thing that and I'm partial to, and we talked about it last week, but I'm a big fan of night fishing, and there is a reasonable amount of fishermen that I know that of night guys that certain times of night is when there's a pretty decent topwater bite. It seems like, and the colors are a little different, and it's not an every night kind of deal. Just from my own experience, seems like the nights when the moon is brighter, and it doesn't have to be like like say a harvest moon where it's so bright you can like read the newspaper and that kind of thing, but just cloud free and just a decent amount of moonlight and that kind of thing, and that's more of your buzzbaits too. But the biggest thing I've seen are your what I would consider your stick type lures, like if you want to go back to old school, like your jitterbugs or your spooks and that kind of thing. But it's just basic black on those,
right?
And I think it's just all about the silhouette, because if you think about it, a fish's eyes are in the top of his head, and he's always looking up, and I think he's looking up to see if there's something up there he can eat, and that's just kind of my caveman type thinking about it. But and if they look up and they just see this dark silhouette twitching around on top of the water, it could be anything. It could be a fish, a ground squirrel, a baby duck, or just anything. And if it's something that's moving and acts like it's got a little bit of life, they're going to eat it more than likely. And that's just kind of my 2 cents on the night fishing. And I think you have to have something that disturbs the water a little bit. And there again, like we talked last week, night fishing, I think this puts you at more of an advantage, because if the fish are feeding, even if you have clear water, they can't see you. I don't think they're as easily spooked at night as they are in the daytime.
Yeah, that's definitely.
And also too, like in the summer, like here, where maybe it's 95 during the day, and it doesn't sound that cool, but if it cools down to 72 of a night, that takes a lot of stress off those fish, and they're going to get in the mood to eat. Maybe not right at 10 o'clock, but sometime, maybe more toward 3 or 4 o'clock, those fish are going to be moving up shallow in the cool of the late night, early morning, and they're going to eat. And a lot of times they'll eat a topwater. It's just always been my experience.
You've got less pressure,
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about night fishing, we're talking about just dead heat dog days of summer most of the time.
Yep.
And you've got to think, say those fish are living offshore on a brush pile or something like that. Well, say you have like a July 4th weekend, and they've got wake boats, giant boats running, pontoons, sea-doos running across them every single hour of the day. Then you've got me and Dan out there fishing a brush pile in the middle of the July 4th celebration, out there dogging on them, catching them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, them fish are pressured. That water's hot.
Yep.
They've been pressured all day. They're spooked. They've got giant motors running over their heads all day. When it comes to night, 3 or 4 in the morning, like you said, hours after all that happened, they weren't really in the eating mood all day. The water's hot. They're hot. They've been they're spooked.
Yep.
And they just kind of sit down there most of the time during the day, and they just sit.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. And because they don't have the energy to move much.
They don't.
Once they get really hot, like I fish tournaments down here. Like I fish Wednesday night series every single year. I fish tournaments in 91-degree water.
Yeah. And that's tough.
And I'll let you know, I've tied for first with 2 unders.
Oh yeah.
So it gets tough down here.
Yeah, it does. Especially seem like the bigger fish are less apt to bite when that water gets hot like that, especially during the daytime. Yeah. I've just always thought that, and it's tough sledding out there when that water's hot when it comes to bass fishing.
That's for sure.
Well, Evan, have you got anything else you want to throw in regards to the topwater fishing?
Not that I can think of. Besides, if you want to go out and throw a topwater, first, if you've never thrown a topwater before, and you go out and you throw a topwater, and the first bite you get, you're hooked for life. There is nothing better, absolutely nothing better than seeing a big bass come up and eat a topwater.
And we may have talked about this before, and I know you use them maybe to locate the fish, but the electronics, does it play as much as a factor? Because it's not like, say, the video game fishing where you're dropping a bait down into a brush pile and watching your screen and fishing. I mean, you're making more of a cast out away from you. Does the electronics play that big a part in the topwater end of things?
They do. Like to give an example, like the lake I'm fixing to go to here in 3 weeks. Lake Hartwell down in South Carolina. I'll be looking for on my graphs just individual like schools of fish, brush piles with schools of fish on them.
Right.
What they do down there in the summertime is if I find wads of bait, around brush, I'll be using my electronics to locate, bait and brush and everything like that.
Right.
And I'll then in turn get up there on my live scope and I'll be looking around for wads of bait and things like that. And I'll be looking and, say I see a big wad of bait out there, I'm just going to hum a big topwater over top of them. Okay. And, I can still use my electronics to help me fish in topwater, but, around here, you can still catch fish on a topwater using your electronics. So you can pull up to a brush pile or, pull up, say down a bank and say on especially if you got live scope or something like that, you can look into a wad of grass or you can look down a bank and say, oh, well, there's a fish in 5 foot of water, on a school of bait, throw a topwater over top of it and it eats it and, all that stuff. But most of the time, topwater is really just kind of an instinctual thing.
Sure, yeah.
You just go down a bank and you are running like a chicken with your head cut off. You're covering.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these guys you see topwater fishing, I mean, they've got that trolling motor set on a pretty high speed, and they're just flinging.
They've got their foot on the trolling. They got 1 foot on the trolling motor, 1 foot on the deck, and they're just going down the bank. That's honestly, that's probably the best way to fish topwater. Really is. I mean, just.
Because that's what you're trying to do is cover water.
Right, that's the thing. It's a reaction bait, so you got to think the more feeding fish that are willing to eat a topwater you put it in front of, the more fish you're going to get, the better you're going to do. So that's kind of something you got to think about when you're fishing topwater.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. That'll be this week's show. Get out this weekend. It's supposed to be nice. It's warming up. They say there's some rain coming in toward the early part of next week, so you got a 2 or 3 day window over the weekend to get out without getting rained on and enjoy yourself. It's supposed to warm up, and I know here at Cave Run the fish are biting, the lake's in good shape and everything. So it's a real opportune time to get out here and test your skills and see how you do this weekend. And as we say here, folks, just get outdoors with Hook Outdoors.